The plane cut through a sky the color of ash and honey, Los Angeles sprawling beneath like a glittering mirage. Harley Sims pressed his forehead against the window, his reflection a wary stranger. 3 years. That's how long it had been since he'd last held his daughter. Too many excuses, too many empty phone calls, too much time spent mourning his wife, instead of showing up for the only family he had left. "Sir, please fasten your seatbelt." The voice of the flight attendant pulled him back. He obeyed mechanically, his mind already on the knock he'd deliver to Matilda's door. The way she'd laugh when she saw him standing there unannounced. He pictured Emma's gap-toothed grin, Jack's little boy energy spilling into his arms. For the first time in years, hope felt like something alive in his chest. The tires kissed the tarmac. Applause broke out in the cabin. Harley didn't join. His hands clenched the armrests as though bracing for impact that hadn't come yet. Outside the terminal, the April sun burned gold across the pavement. A rideshare driver lifted Harley's bag into the trunk, glancing at the small wooden box tucked under his arm. "Gift for someone special?" the driver asked. "My daughter," Harley said. His voice cracked on the second word. "Haven't seen her in a long time." The driver smiled. "Then today's a good day." Harley wanted to believe that. The city unfurled outside the car windows, palm trees swaying like metronomes to a rhythm that felt foreign. He remembered when Matilda first called to tell him she was moving here. "Dad, LA is a place where everything feels possible." He hadn't understood then. He wasn't sure he understood now. When the car pulled into a quiet neighborhood, Harley's heart leapt. White shutters, a garden gate, the tricycle he'd bought last Christmas leaning against the porch rail. This was it. He stepped out, straightening his jacket, rehearsing in his mind, "It's me, sweetheart." Surprise. He pressed the doorbell. The chime echoed inside. He smiled, waiting for footsteps. Silence. He tried again. Same echo, same silence. "Matilda." His knuckles rapped against the wood. Still nothing. Harley's gaze shifted. The roses Matilda once boasted about were shriveled, their petals littering the walkway like forgotten confetti. The mailbox sagged under the weight of weeks of unopened letters. The tricycle wheels spun in the wind, squeaking as if mocking his anticipation. Something was wrong. His throat tightened as he circled to the side yard. The patio furniture was coated in dust, the vegetable patch brittle and abandoned. This was not the home of a family in motion. This was a house that had stopped breathing. "Excuse me." A voice startled him. An elderly neighbor in a straw hat peered over the fence, looking for the McCoys. "Haven't seen them in weeks. Place has been awfully quiet." Weeks. Harley's hand gripped the wooden jewelry box so tightly the edge bit into his palm. The hope that had carried him across state lines evaporated in an instant, replaced by a cold dread. The reunion he'd dreamed of wasn't waiting for him here. Something else was. Harley sat on the front step, the wooden jewelry box resting heavy in his lap. The sunlight that had felt warm minutes ago now pressed down like a weight. He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over Matilda's number. Calling ruined the surprise, but silence gnawed harder than pride. 1 ring, 2, then her cheerful voicemail. He tried again, straight to voicemail. He pressed once more, determined to leave a message this time, when a voice answered. "Hello, not Matilda. Male. Professional. This is Harley Sims. I'm looking for my daughter, Matilda McCoy. I've been trying, Mr. Sims." A pause, then the man's tone softened. "This is Dr. Rivera. I'm calling from Cedars, Sinai Medical Center. Are you family?" The words landed like shrapnel. His hand gripped the edge of the step. "I'm her father. Where is she?" Another pause, longer this time. Then quietly, "She's in intensive care. Stage 4 cancer. Her condition is critical." Harley's breath left him in a ragged sound. The roses. The mail. The silence. They weren't signs of neglect. They were signs of absence. That's not possible," he rasped. "She never told me. Patients sometimes protect loved ones from the truth. But she's asked for you. If you can, come quickly." The call ended. The silence of the neighborhood returned, cruel in its normalcy. Somewhere down the block, a lawn mower buzzed. Life going on as though the world hadn't just split open. The taxi smelled faintly of leather and citrus air freshener, a surreal contrast to the hurricane inside Harley's chest. He clutched the photograph he carried everywhere, Matilda laughing in her kitchen, flour dusted on her hair, children grinning at her side. A picture of a life that already felt like a memory. "She's dying," he whispered, not realizing he'd spoken aloud, until the driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "I'm sorry, sir," the man said softly. "I have a daughter too. Same age. Nothing hurts like when our children suffer." Harley pressed his palm over his eyes, as if he could dam the flood threatening to spill. How had he not known? 3 months ago she'd said she was just tired. He'd assumed it was motherhood, the endless work of raising kids. He should have heard the plea hidden in her voice. The traffic crawled, each red light a cruelty. He dialed Gary's number, Matilda's husband, the man who had promised to take care of your daughter, sir. Straight to voicemail. He called again. Nothing. With every unanswered ring, fury crept in to fill the space grief had hollowed. The hospital rose out of the city like a fortress, glass reflecting the bruised sky of early evening. Harley's legs felt alien as he walked through the sliding doors, past cheerful art installations that felt obscene in their brightness. At the desk, his voice cracked as he gave Matilda's name. 7th floor, intensive care. The elevator doors closed, trapping him with his reflection in polished steel. He barely recognized the man staring back, face gray, eyes burning, hands trembling with equal parts fear and rage. Whatever waited for him at the end of this ride would change everything. And Gary, wherever he was, would have to answer for it. The elevator doors slid open with a muted chime. The antiseptic air of the intensive care unit rushed in, bleach and sorrow, sterile corridors lined with muffled beeps and low voices. Harley stepped out, each stride weighted like he was walking into a storm. At the nurse's station, a compact man with wire-rimmed glasses looked up. "Mr. Sims." "Yes," Harley whispered, though it came out more like a plea than a confirmation. "I'm Dr. Rivera. She's been waiting for you." His tone carried both relief and warning. "She's weak, but she knows you're coming." They walked together down the hall, passing rooms where quiet battles were being fought. An elderly man clutching his wife's hand, a child reading to a parent with an IV drip. "The soundtrack of mortality, room 712, the doctor said softly, holding the door. Harley hesitated, gathering himself. Then he stepped inside. The sight hollowed him. Matilda lay propped against pillows, skin pale, hair thin, her body swallowed by tubes and wires. But when her eyes found him, they lit up like a lantern struggling but refusing to die. "Daddy." The single word, hoarse, fragile, struck harder than any diagnosis. Harley crossed the room in 3 steps, gathering her carefully into his arms. She was bird-like now, all sharp bones and trembling weight. "I'm here," he murmured into her hair, though his voice cracked. "I'm not going anywhere." For a moment, they stayed like that. Father and daughter clinging as though the years of distance could be erased in a single embrace. When she pulled back, tears streaked her cheeks. "I didn't want to worry you. You were already grieving Mom. I thought I could handle it." A Harley smoothed the blanket around her shoulders the way he once tucked her in against nightmares. "You should never have had to handle this alone." Matilda's gaze faltered toward the window. "Gary said it was better not to tell you until there was good news." A Harley froze. Gary knew. She nodded, shame flickering across her face. "He's been distant. He says it scares him. He says the medical bills are ruining his future. Hey, he hasn't been here much." The words fell like stones in Harley's chest. Rage flared, sharp and cold. He thought of the unanswered calls, the silence on the other end of the line. A husband should have been beside her through every treatment, every sleepless night. Instead, absence, excuses, abandonment. "Where is he now?" Harley asked, his voice tight. "Business meetings," she whispered. "He said he'd be back before the weekend." But even she didn't sound convinced. Harley's jaw clenched until it ached. Business meetings. The phrase tasted like poison. He kissed her temple, forcing gentleness into the gesture. "Don't worry about him, sweetheart. You focus on healing. I'll take care of the rest." But as he sat by her bed, holding her cold hand, his mind churned. Something was wrong, deeper than illness, deeper than grief. Gary wasn't just absent. He was hiding. And Harley was going to find out why. The hospital room dimmed as evening settled, the city's glow bleeding through the blinds. Machines hummed steady rhythms beside Matilda's bed, their beeps like fragile lifelines. She drifted into sleep, her hand still locked in Harley's. Harley sat rigid in the chair, staring at her thin face, fury churning beneath his grief. He couldn't shake the thought of Gary, his absence more violent than any presence could have been. The silence was broken by the buzz of a phone. On the bedside table, Matilda's screen lit up with notifications. Harley hesitated, then reached for it, telling himself it was for her sake. A new Instagram story pulsed at the top of the feed. Gary's name. He tapped. The first frame jolted him, a gleaming yacht, sun glittering off polished decks, champagne glasses raised against a blue horizon. The caption read, "Living my best life with the boys." The second frame was worse. Gary himself, sunglasses reflecting the sea, arms slung around strangers, grin wide and careless. Behind him, the Pacific stretched infinite. Posted less than 2 hours ago. Harley's stomach dropped. He scrolled, screen after screen, Gary diving into turquoise water. Gary sipping cocktails at sunset. Gary laughing into the camera. Sometimes you just have to escape reality, you know. Harley's grip tightened on the phone until his knuckles whitened. Escape reality. Reality was his daughter gasping through chemo, veins bruised by IVs clinging to life. Reality was Emma and Jack asking for a father who couldn't be bothered to show up. God. Harley muttered under his breath. He's not just absent. He's gone. He switched to his banking app, pulse hammering as suspicion guided his fingers. The account he'd once let Gary access, for emergencies only, loaded slowly, painfully. The transactions scrolled like a confession. Marina del Rey Yacht Rentals, door 15,000 Beverly Hills Mercedes Service, 200 Rodeo Drive, 3200 Malibu Restaurant. Note 850. Each line was a wound. Luxury stacked against luxury, while Matilda wasted away in a hospital bed. Harley's chest burned. He'd trusted Gary. He'd funded his betrayal. The room suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. He rose, pacing the linoleum, fists clenching and unclenching. He wanted to storm out, track Gary down, drag him by the collar into this room and force him to face what he'd abandoned. But then Matilda stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, finding him instantly. Dade. Her voice was faint but laced with fear. Harley rushed to her side, masking his rage with tenderness. "I'm here, sweetheart. Just stretching my legs." She searched his face. "You're angry." He forced a smile, brushing a strand of thinning hair from her forehead. "Not at you. Never at you." Her hands squeezed his weakly. "Promise me you won't let him consume you. I need you strong, not bitter." Harley swallowed hard. "I promise." But the promise tasted hollow. Because in the pit of his heart, he knew the storm building inside him was far from spent. And when Gary finally walked into the light, there would be nowhere for him to hide. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty, its hum reduced to the rattle of vending machines and the echo of distant footsteps. Harley sat alone at a corner table, the glow of his phone screen illuminating his lined face. He had just finished cutting Gary's access. Bank accounts revoked, cards frozen, every lifeline severed with surgical precision. The device buzzed in his palm. Gary's name. Harley answered, voice flat. "Where are you? Where am I? Where the hell are you?" Gary's voice cracked with panic. "My cards just got declined in front of everyone. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? Fix this." Harley closed his eyes, letting the silence stretch until it felt like a noose. "Then, your wife is in intensive care, fighting for her life. And you're whining about your credit cards." A beat. Then a scoff. "Look, I didn't sign up for." "You didn't sign up." Harley's voice thundered now, echoing off the sterile walls. Heads turned, but he didn't care. "You stood at an altar, looked my daughter in the eyes, and swore you'd love her in sickness and in health. And when sickness came, you ran." On the other end, Gary fumbled for words. I couldn't handle it. The bills, the stress. She's not the same woman anymore. Do you know what that does to a man?" Harley slammed his fist on the table, coffee sloshing over the rim. "Don't you dare talk to me about what it does to you. I've buried my wife. I've watched my daughter shrink into a shadow of herself, and still she smiles when her kids walk into that room. You hide on yachts, drinking champagne with strangers, while your children ask where their father is." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Then Gary's voice, smaller now. You can't just cut me off, I need. You need nothing? Harley spat. Not my money. Not her love. Not those children who deserve better than the coward you've become. His voice dropped, cold and deliberate. From this moment on, you're finished. You won't touch another dollar of mine. You won't darken her doorway again. If you have an ounce of decency left, you'll stay gone. Gary muttered something unintelligible. Anger, maybe fear, but Harley ended the call before it could form. The screen went black. For the first time all day, Harley felt still, empty but certain. He had cut the rot clean from the wound. He returned to Matilda's room quietly. She was awake, eyes glassy but aware. You look lighter, she whispered. Harley sat beside her, taking her frail hand into his. Because I've done what needed doing. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. You always were the one who fixed things. He brushed a tear from her cheek, his own vision blurring. Sweetheart, some things a man can't fix. But I can promise you this. He won't hurt you again. Ever. Her fingers squeezed his, weak but sure. And for that moment, in the fragile stillness of the ICU, father and daughter shared the rarest thing of all, peace. Morning crept into the hospital room in quiet layers of pale gold, slipping between blinds and draping itself across the bed where Matilda slept. Machines continued their steady beeping, but for once, Harley didn't hear them as a countdown. He heard them as proof her heart still fought, her lungs still drew breath. He sat at her bedside, the wooden jewelry box resting on the small table. He had polished it with his hand all night, the way one might polish a prayer. Inside, Martha's ring gleamed faintly. He imagined Emma one day slipping it onto her finger, a legacy of women who endured, who loved fiercely, who kept families alive even in the face of loss. Matilda stirred, eyelids fluttering. When she saw him, her lips curved into the gentlest smile. You didn't leave. Not again? Harley said softly. Not ever. For a while, neither spoke. Their silence wasn't heavy now. It was shared, like the hush before a sunrise. At last, she whispered, What happens if I don't make it? Harley's throat tightened, but he forced himself not to look away. Then your children will grow up, knowing their mother was the bravest woman I've ever met. And they'll know they were loved every second of their lives. Her eyes glistened. And Gary? Harley exhaled slowly. He's gone. You won't have to carry his absence anymore. I've closed that chapter for you. She nodded, relief softening her features. Then, with a trembling hand, she reached toward the jewelry box. Promise me something, Daddy. Anything. When I'm gone, give that ring to Emma. Not just as a keepsake. Tell her it's a reminder. That love isn't measured by words at the altar or pictures on a yacht. It's measured by who stays. Harley pressed her hand between his, swallowing against the knot in his chest. I'll tell her. And she'll believe it, because she'll see it in you. Hours later, Harley stepped into the hallway. Emma and Jack ran toward him, their neighbor guiding them gently. The children threw their arms around his legs, clinging with a desperation that made his knees buckle. He bent, pulling them close, breathing in the scent of crayons and shampoo, an innocence that deserved protection. Grandpa's here, he whispered, steadying his voice for them. And I'm not going anywhere. As they clung to him, Harley lifted his gaze through the hospital window. The city stretched beyond, chaotic, dazzling, indifferent. Somewhere out there, Gary would be learning the sharp truth of consequences, his champagne life crumbling. But Harley no longer cared. His war wasn't with Gary. It was with time. With illness, with the ache of love that refused to surrender. He returned to Matilda's room with the children in tow. Emma climbed onto the bed, curling against her mother. Jack nestled into Harley's lap. For a moment, the machines, the fear, the betrayal, all of it fell away. What remained was simple and unshakable. A father who stayed. A daughter who still fought. Two children learning, even in the shadow of loss, what it meant to be loved without condition. And as Harley watched over them, the final thought came like a vow etched in stone. Some families survive not because life spares them, but because love refuses to leave.